First impressions can be everything, and that remains true for video games. With so many titles vying for your attention, the opening hours are crucial. Players will often make up their minds on whether a game is worth investing their time into based on the first few hours they have with it, with this selection being the absolute best. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 video games with the best opening sequences. Number 10. Marvel's Spider-Man. Insomniac's first foray into the Spider-Man universe takes the page from the silver screen and throws the player into the shoes of everyone's favorite web-slinger after a brief cinematic introduction. The game opens in Peter Parker's disheveled apartment, and instead of retreading the familiar origin story, picks up with a seasoned Peter struggling to make ends meet as a scientist, while also fighting crime as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Peter oozes the energy of an awkward 20-something just learning the ropes of adulthood as he scrambles around his tiny New York studio apartment gathering his gear. After donning his suit, he throws himself from the window and makes his way over the rooftops. Within minutes of starting, the game hands control over to the player and has them swinging through the streets of an exceptionally recreated New York. The whole sequence from beginning to end just flawlessly introduces the player to Insomniac's version of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, while also recreating the nostalgic feeling for even the most casual Spidey fan. Number 9. Doom 2016. Some titles don't require much in the way of a preamble, and 2016's reboot of Doom is certainly one of them. There's a story there and actually some excellent world building, but this all mostly serves as a mechanism to give the player an excuse to massacre hordes of demons with some fast-paced gunplay. Doom gets a gun into the hands of the player within seconds, and the high-octane shooting never lets up. It helps that the general premise of the game is simple, as there's no need for a long drawn-out tutorial. The game teaches the player to shoot at anything that moves and do it as efficiently as possible, before sending them off on their quest to eradicate the demonic scourge. The opening sequence concludes with the Doomslayer punching an intercom, projecting the voice of Dr. Samuel Hayden, a scientist whose work is responsible for the current demonic invasion, before the game's title is displayed on the screen to the sound of heavy metal music. The title then fades and the music stops to the perfectly timed sound of Doomslayer cocking a shotgun. Lovely stuff. Number 8. Halo Combat Evolved. Much like Doom, Halo Combat Evolved gets the player right into the action as quickly as possible, albeit not quite as quickly as its demon-slaying cousin. After a brief introduction to Master Chief and his AI sidekick Cortana, they're then sent on their way to fight through the pesky Covenant who've invaded their cruiser vessel Pillar of Autumn. The action comes thick and fast as Master Chief must fight his way through the Covenant in search of the last escape shuttle. Along the way, the player will fight alongside their fellow Marines before leaving the ship behind for the Halo installation below. It's a relatively straightforward concept, but serves the player well in introducing them to the world and selling them on Master Chief's cause. While the introduction was great at the time, the sequence has taken on even more significance following the events of prequel Halo Reach. Reach involves the events leading up to the first game in the series and highlights the significance of Cortana in fending off the Covenant invaders. Therefore, knowing the story of the prequel adds another layer to the importance of this opening sequence. Number 7. Prey 2017. Prey takes the classic "everything is not quite as it seems" approach to its opening as it subverts players' expectations from the get-go. Initially, it appears that the player character Morgan Yu is just some executive living in a swanky penthouse taking a helicopter to their place of work, when in actual fact this is all a facade, and the entirety of the game takes place in the confines of a space station. The opening plays out like Groundhog Day, and it quickly instills an unnerving feeling into the player. It's not long before the truth is revealed and the real setting for the game is uncovered. However, it raises questions about who or what the player can trust throughout their journey. The opening is a masterclass in subverting expectations while providing an excellent platform to build an engaging world. Despite the criticism that the game bared no resemblance to its 2006 counterpart, 2017's reboot deserves to be experienced if not for the opening alone. Number 6. Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. Naughty Dog's second entry into the Uncharted series gets the ball rolling right away, with an incredible nail-biting opening that wouldn't feel out of place in an Indiana Jones film. Among Thieves sees intrepid explorer Nathan Drake wake up bleeding heavily on a train carriage, before quickly learning the hard way that said carriage is hanging vertically from a cliff edge. The player assumes control of Drake as he's hanging from the bottom of the carriage and must then navigate their way up the exterior of the carriage to safety. The tension doesn't let up up as the carriage slides from the icy cliff and various objects come hurtling down at the injured adventurer. The sequence only lasts around 4 minutes or so in total, but it's certainly enough to leave even the most steadfast of players with sweaty palms, and sets the tone for the rest of the experience. Among Thieves represented a significant jump in quality from the first game and took the series in the direction that it remains in today. Therefore, this introduction serves an even greater purpose as it marks a defining moment in the history of the beloved franchise. Number 5. God of War. 2018's reinvention of the God of War series introduced fans to a weathered and bearded Kratos and his son Atreus. The game received critical acclaim and offers one of the best cinematic experiences in all of gaming. Therefore, it should come as little surprise then that it features an excellent opening sequence. The reboot opens with Kratos preparing a funeral pyre for his dead wife before taking Atreus hunting to test his skills. The initial moments impeccably portray the antipathy between the father and his son, although it also provides brief glimpses into a softer side of Kratos that fans won't have seen previously. The development of this relationship between the two is the driving force for the adventure, and the opening sequence perfectly sets the foundations for this to develop. In series-defining style, the opening sequence concludes with a savage fight, this time with a baleful stranger who arrives at Kratos' door. The battle spans several minutes and sees the two men knock 7 bells out of each other before the son of Zeus puts his adversary down for the count, albeit only temporarily. This face-off introduces the game's antagonist and stipulates that Kratos' retirement among the Norse pantheon is unlikely to be as uneventful as he first thought. Number 4. Mass Effect 2. Not many games open with the death of the main character, however that's exactly what happened in Mass Effect 2. The second entry in BioWare's hugely popular sci-fi RPG opened with the destruction of the system's Alliance starship, the Normandy, along with most of its crew, including the returning Commander Shepard. A conversation between the ominous elusive man and Miranda concludes with a comment on the importance of the commander to the survival of humanity. Then the Normandy comes under fire from an unidentified enemy vessel. Players take control as Shepard stumbles through the ship trying to save their crew, but ultimately is ripped from the interior and shown floating through space as their oxygen expires. Players are left in shock as the game's title is displayed on the screen and somber piano music plays. The commander is eventually revived by the elusive man, which somewhat dulls the impact. But as far as cinematic openings go, this is indeed up there with the best. The sheer shock from the introduction serves its purpose in highlighting the danger that faces humankind and prepares the player for the fight to come. Number 3. Medal of Honor Frontline. The late 1990s and early 2000s were overrun with World War II shooters. One of the leading franchises at the time was EA's Medal of Honor series, which blessed fans of the genre with a realistic, at least for its time, rendition of the Normandy beach landings. Releasing less than 4 years after Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, which brutally depicted the same landings for the silver screen, Frontline opened with its depiction of the daring assault on the beaches of northern France in 1944. Bullets fizzed past the player as they made their way onto the beach, and explosions would resonate as bombs fell all around. Tasked with making their way up the vast expanse of sand, along with fellow Allied soldiers, all the while coming under fire from machine gun encampments high up on the hill. While the sequence certainly shows its age today, at the time this was a shining example of a video game exploring something where previously only movies had dared to go. As EA now own the popular Battlefield series, it's unlikely they'll revive Medal of Honor despite all their previous success. Number 2. BIOSHOCK. A blazing plane crash leaves the player stranded in the ocean with nothing but a solitary lighthouse structure in sight. After seeking the safety of the structure and entering the bathysphere, the player is plunged back into the depths of the ocean before a commanding voice is projected within the submersible. The voice continues filling the confined space with capitalist propaganda before a vast expanse of underwater structures and neon lights come into view. Rapture. The introduction of Rapture is one if not the best introduction to a locale there's ever been in the industry. Once the player sets foot in the eerie interior of the underwater metropolis, they're quickly introduced to the not-so-friendly inhabitants. An unnerving interaction with what's later revealed to be a spider slicer quickly lets the player know this is not going to be the haven that was expected. The introduction to Rapture and its inhabitants perfectly sets the tone for the unforgettable adventure that awaits, and it remains one of the best opening sequences in all of gaming. Number 1. The Last of Us. Developer Naughty Dog's second entry on this list is their best, and arguably the best opening sequence in all of gaming. The player is quickly given reasons to care about Joel and his daughter Sarah as they take control of the latter as she searches the house for her father. Things quickly ramp up and the pair make their way through the streets in search of safety from the hordes of infected that now inhabit the world. The journey gets the player accustomed to the game world and its characters quickly before dealing one of the most harrowing blows in all of gaming as Sarah is shot by an armed guard. The tragic death of Joel's daughter is the launchpad that kicks off his development from a caring father to the cynical and untrusting guardian that players see after the time jump. The opening never fails to tug on the heartstrings and perfectly sets the player up for the bleak and melancholic experience ahead. The Last of Us remains a prime example of how gaming can rival other mediums for narrative content, and its opening is a big reason as to why. That's the end of our list, but do let me know down in that comment box if you can think of any other video games with excellent opening sequences. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're liking, come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm @JessMcDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness.